So on populism, it seems to be sort of back at the, everyone's saying there's a rise in populism at the moment with Trump and Farage and Brexit. And why is populism on the rise again, do you think?
Well, insofar as it is, if we take the various elements to it, so if essentially we focus, well, I think I'll take two aspects to it. So we tend to call it, Matthew Goodwin and Roger Eatwell quite nicely call it national populism, and that's kind of quite a useful label. And the point, I think the national matters as well as the populism. Indeed, one might also want to say socially conservative populism, but it's not all of it is socially conservative. So point one is that it's about how a liberal elite, which is perhaps often characterized as an international liberal elite, which is often thought to have close connections to the world of international finance, that elite has organized things in such a way that the ordinary people lose out. And they lose out potentially in two ways. One is culturally, because of the impact of immigration, which is one of the consequences of international capitalism. They will tend to feel they lose it economically. Now, in part, that's a story about the financial crash, but they will also tend to, this also feeds into the arguments about how the profits from capitalism have flowed much more easily to shareholders and to those at the very, very top of the executive pile, as opposed to the general public, who have not seen much of an increase in their living standards in recent years. So that raises questions about the whole, social democratic fabric, which is about taming capitalism in order to redistribute the proceeds of capitalism to the whole of society. Well, that project seems to be in trouble. And it's national populism because these are people who are looking for control, right? They're looking for control against the winds of international capitalism. They look to sovereigntist solutions for protection against those winds. So they want to see control of immigration. They will perhaps, in some instances, will certainly want to avoid, not be part of a big megalith. What they will see as a big megalith is not necessarily true in reality, of course, but something like the European Union, which seems remote, which really does seem to be being run by a very Europhile elite with which they have very little amount of contact, very little understanding, etc., etc. It's all of that, and you can see how. So in part, this is just a part of a broader argument about how we run international capitalism and the extent to which we may or may not need to regulate it more than we have done in the past, and to do so differently. And it's also an argument then about the immigration consequences and the cultural consequences, of which Brexit, just fits into all of these themes, because it raises questions about sovereignty, it raises questions about the cultural consequences of migration, and it raises questions about the economic success of international organizations, because the European Union is no longer as easily portrayed as an economically successful institution in the way that it was 40 years ago.